to NeuroDiverse Generation, the podcast where we flip the script on what it means to thrive through neurodiversity. I'm your host, Jenna Evelyn, and today we're diving headfirst into the quirks, creativity, and challenges of the neurodiverse experience. Whether you're here to laugh, learn, or find a little inspiration, you've found your people. Please note that this program may not be suitable for younger viewers due to explicit language and mature themes. Parental guidance is advised. This show is aired for educational purposes. We are not licensed diagnosticians or counselors. Let's get the conversation rolling. Petra Laranjo is a passionate coach and expert in personal development, dedicated to helping individuals align their values and vision for a more fulfilling life. With a background in organizational psychology, Petra understands the profound impact that personal alignment has on overall well-being. In this episode, she explores how discovering and integrating your core values can lead to greater clarity and purpose in both personal and professional realms. Today, we delve into Petra's insights on cultivating authentic alignment and living a life that truly resonates with who you are.
Would love to understand, because this episode is all about aligning your values with your vision and creating purpose through that intersection, right? So I would love to know a little bit more about how your personal values influence the creation of your business and your coaching brand.
Such a great question. Sure, Jenna. Okay, so it's interesting because values, when I started understanding what values were, when I had a definition around it, the descriptor around it, it all started making more sense. Because when I was young, or when we were young, we just do things because we do things, right? They make sense to us, they feel right. We don't have the words to define it. But when I started understanding what vision and values and purpose were, don't ask me how old I was at the time, but I started looking at, okay, but I've always done this thing and I've always done this. So for example, I was the kid, and I shared it yesterday on one of my lives, actually. I was the kid when I was little. I remember being little, like littler than I am now, because I didn't grow very much. But
it's the first short joke of the season. Okay, sorry, I'm with it.
So I remember going onto the playground, like seeing some kid was being bullied. And I remember running onto the playground and starting to like push and shove and yell at the bullies. So I clicked yesterday for the first time. I was like, oh my God, that means I was bullying the other kids that were bullying the kids today. I had that awareness yesterday for the first time.
Absolutely. But you see that kind of thing like in schools all the time, where it's like, someone thinks that someone's being mean to them. So they're like, you're bullying me. And I see it with my kids all the time. I'm like, if this one was bullying me because this and this and this happened. But then in the same sentence, they'll turn to me and say, and you know what? No offense, but she's kind of a crybaby. So we told her that or whatever. And I sit there and I go, how does this exactly like add up? And I love in particular about your brand, Petra, like you said, we kind of just take on what we get, right? When we kids, we like, okay, well, this is what mom and dad do. This is what's normal. This is like what's accepted. So this is what I'm going to do, Even more so, some of us have it like a step further where we grow up in like religious households or whatever kind of a culture you've got it in your home. And it ends up, you end up kind of being indoctrinated into certain things that you later on come to question. And there's a lot of that intention, that deliberate like thought behind where those values are going to lie in order to align with your vision. That's quite important, isn't it?
Huge. It's exactly as you're saying, because when we are younger, as we grow up, we're conditioned. Our values are conditioned, a lot of them. So especially if you grow up, let's say, in a religious household, which I did, certain things that felt normal to me. Whoop, whoop,
you and me both.
See you, babe. That's the way things are, because if we look at even cultural appropriation, what's right for us as South Africans might not be what's right for someone else. So, sometimes we're so quick to judge, for example, in Asia, where, they have a certain way of living. And we're so quick to
Yes.
judge, but then someone sitting in Bali will judge South Africans for the way we live. So a lot of it is
Absolutely.
our values. And then there's our upbringing. So our parents, our elders, whatever that is, there's society, there's our schools. There is so much. And we just take on at the time what makes sense to us at the time. I think what happens is because most parenting, I'm saying we as if I have human children. I have 3. We as humans, let me phrase it that way. We as humans think we get into this trajectory of this is the way things are, this is what's right, this is what's wrong, you're right, I'm wrong, blah, blah, blah. And we kind of get stuck in that. And that's where we define our values. I mean, there's all those beautiful ways of defining what you stand for, your values, etc. But where it comes in for me is when last have you reassessed your values to check if they're actually real and true for you now? Because that's where the cognitive dissonance comes in, where I say that these are my values, but somehow I feel like a imposter. So you get imposter syndrome. I feel like I'm letting myself down. I feel like a hypocrite because I'm saying one thing, but my actions are doing the opposite. Yes. Or I keep trying, but I'm not. So, for example, I always use this example because it's so easy, but I was brought up, well, I'm Portuguese. So I was brought up in a Portuguese household.
Shout out. Subtle shout out there. Just a little subtle brag.
And Portuguese people by nature are big meat eaters and seafood lovers, etc. So that's how I grew up, and that was normal. But as an animal lover from a young age, Jenna, I would be eating it, but there was always something there was always a discomfort inside of me. But because I was brought up to be, nice and sweet and kind and don't talk back and listen to your parents because they know better and listen to your elders because they know better. They always know better. So if I was like, no, I don't want to eat it, they're like, no, eat it. I'm like, okay. But interestingly, if I was eating, let's say, chicken and someone had to point out that it was a chicken, so they made it visual, as in the animal, didn't matter how old I was, I'd push it aside and say, no, thanks, I don't want it. Same with fish, whatever it was. So I was okay to eat it even young. Like I couldn't eat fish on the bone. My mom had to take it all off. Chicken, like nothing could look like the animal because then I wouldn't go near it. And that's what I'm trying to say with what's our values. It's what's normal based on how we're brought up. And then when I was 18, I just decided that's it. I'm done. I'm not eating animals anymore, which went against, because it just didn't align anymore. And I finally started finding my voice.
I think it was you got in touch and you became sensitive to that sensitivity that you had instead of trying to like suppress it and push it aside, right?
Because it didn't sit well with me. And that's where I ask people that I work with, my clients, or when I do my professional talks or whatever, is I ask people, what do you stand for? What do you believe in, truly? Who is the person that you want to become or that you want to step into? And what is the legacy of impact that you want to create? And when I ask people, who are you? What do you stand for and what do you believe in? Those two, what do you truly believe in? Because we can say, I believe this and this and this, no, but hold on. Do you really, can you stand by that? Can you back it up?
Exactly. Because a lot of people, I think, particularly in this day and age, a lot of people will say, oh, like I'm so pro mental health, or I'm so this, and I believe in this and this because it's the socially appropriate thing to do. And because that's now the new thing. And it's not something that they innately emotionally really connect with. I also love that you place so much emphasis on, the fact that you brought up traveling for starters, because that's exactly what I was going to bring up, was traveling in Asia and seeing like a totally different kind of a culture. And I mean, I cannot imagine what they think of it. They must think we're absolute animals the way we live. Because there's... Yeah, I don't know. It's a much more grounded culture in a lot of ways, that Eastern kind of a thing.
Yes.
But I love your emphasis that you place on it being like, you need to understand that you're doing the best with what you can at that point in time. It's with what you have available.
Yes.
That's been a difficult pill for me to swallow in my journey, is understanding that a lot of the damage that I caused when I was emotionally dysregulated and undiagnosed, and no one knew what the fuck was going on. And I think, in retrospect, I can now understand it, and I can understand where that comes from. Unfortunately, the people who I hurt and who have hurt me in response to this misunderstanding, we can all see that a lot more clearly now. I found it very, very difficult at first to separate my condition and the behaviors that ensued as a result from me and my personality. And it's such a necessary division, right? It's a distinction that has to be made, because you internalize everything otherwise.
That's exactly what you're saying there. It's a part of you. It's not your entire being. Certain things that we do, certain things that we experience are parts of us. And when you know different, you do different. You can choose different.
Yes.
So, yeah, I judge myself. I made myself so wrong for so many years. Like, I should never have eaten animals because I always loved them.
Should have, could have, would have, all of that, right?
Judgment, which is no way to live freely.
No, so that was my therapist's biggest thing. She was like, can you just be a little bit more compassionate to yourself, please? Like, she gave me a self-compassion journal so that I could get into like the habit of it. And I, of all things, did not think that was what was going to come up in therapy. But this conversation actually reminds me, I think I was about, maybe like 11, 12, 13. And I was already by that point, like I could pick up that I was emotionally dysregulated in some way. So I was convinced I was just depressed. And I probably was. Like, I suffer from comorbid depression. And it's chronic on top of that, which is why I have to take antidepressants as well as my ADHD meds. That and the anxiety. But now we're going off track. So I was sitting at what my parents had a meeting with like some of the neighbors. We were discussing something in the community and whatever. And I was just around. So I managed to greet people and talk to people. And I spoke to someone who was in the psychology industry, who was in my neighborhood. And she turned to me, she said, well, what's going on? I was like, well, I think I'm depressed. And she was like, no, you're not depressed. I was like, ik fucking excuse me? I think I would know, what do you mean? And she goes, no. You're dealing with depression. You are not depressed. And I was so furious with her, and I never understood it until I got older and I realized the distinction between my ADHD and myself. And then I was like, click, that's what she was saying.
Huge, Jen. I love that you use that example. I'll say had epilepsy. I'll own it now for the sake of the example, but I had epilepsy for 23 years. And it was diagnosed, well, I had a car accident, blacked out, didn't have a clue what was going on. It was just after my mom had passed away from cancer. So I had brain injuries when I was younger, like falling off a horse and falling off a ledge. And then with my mom passing away and all of that came up, it triggered the epilepsy. So I had or experienced epilepsy for 23 years, was having multiple seizures a week at one point. But in all those 23 years, I never owned it, or I never internalized that I had epilepsy. I didn't want to make it true and real for me as part of my identity. Yes, I experienced seizures. And I know that it's different with different conditions, but I just wanted to encourage, if anyone's watching, is just watch what we own, watch what we take on, and what we embody. Because whatever we embody is what we've defined that we'll never be able to change, or what our bodies will never be able to release. And the neurologist always told me, no, Petra, you've got epilepsy for the rest of your life. And I refused to own that as part of me. I was like, okay, cool. I experience epilepsy. They're like, no, you have epilepsy. You are an epileptic. I'm like, I don't know
about that. Yeah.
I just didn't want to take it on. Like, if you're pregnant, you're pregnant. You can't be like, well, I'm not really experiencing. No, it's part of you. So
Yeah, no, honey, wake up and smell the roses.
but there's certain things where what are you claiming that actually it isn't part of you, like you were saying, it's something that you experience, where because you're claiming it and making it part of your being is actually what's creating the trauma, the drama in your life, is creating your inability to find healing through it. So, for example, with the epilepsy for me, because I never claimed it, even though I was experiencing multiple seizures, long story short, I've only had 4 seizures in 2 years, 2.5 years, or whatever it is.
Wow!
Which is
Yay!
so, yeah, it's been incredible. And it's been a lot of work, emotional work, a lot of release, a lot of somatic thing, etc. So it's just an encouragement to anything that we take on, just always keep it in the back of our minds of like, okay, maybe this is what my body's experiencing now, but it's not a life sentence necessarily.
You've enlightened something there for me as well, because there's parts of me where I'm like, oh wow, I really thought I was over that. And then like old resentment bubbles up or whatever. And I was like curious about it. So I started speaking to, she's like my adopted granny. I have a few of them. And she mentioned the power of emotional code. Now, I don't really understand the science behind it, but it's based on the premise that obviously your emotions are chemical within your body and they get trapped within your cells. So you can pass down things like depression, grief, anger, resentment. You can pass that on genetically to your offspring, and to their offspring, and that's a lot of the time how these cycles take place. This is what she explained to me, and she's a lot more in touch with her spirituality, I think, than I am. But it was an interesting concept for me along those lines. I think there's also in everything that we're talking about here, there's an element of like honesty that is absolutely 150, 11 to 1%, necessary in order to pull this off, because that dissonance takes place when you're not honest with yourself. And I think it can be really difficult to cognitively and consciously go through the motions of actually unpacking all of those boxes that you would rather keep sealed and like in the corner of your mind for the rest of your life. But acknowledging those is a necessary point of action in figuring out and deciding who you are and who you want to be.
Yes. It's oh man, I'm so glad that you said that. It's because we don't, I mean, life gets so busy as it is, right? In our day and age, how we live. So there's always something else to do. But I know with my work, I mean, my life the last 2 years have been 2 of the most challenging, bar losing my mom, and also losing, my dogs, like they're my family. But it has been 2 of the most challenging years after, a really traumatic betrayal and a divorce and I committed to going into the ugly work, the deep work, the ugly crying.
And you sat with it. You sat with it, right?
I sat with it. And something, and I guess it's also the work that I do naturally. I'm inclined, no, let me not say inclined, because it is a choice as well. I had a few sessions with a coach that did conscious uncoupling. And after every session, she just kept acknowledging, she's like, Petra, you're so brave and you're so strong. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, doesn't everyone just want to do the stuff? Like, no,
yeah.
no, not everyone's willing to go that deep. And for me, it's like, but why wouldn't you want to go that deep?
Exactly. Why would you want to live on this earth for an average lifespan of a person, and not have that, like being in touch and being aligned with who and what you are? It's living superficially in a way, don't you think?
It is, and it's comfortable, because let's pick up the values as well. When I chose to stop eating meat, animals, whatever, it made everyone around me very uncomfortable. So sometimes owning up and standing within your values and saying, actually, I don't believe in this anymore. It served me at one point, but it's actually not who I am, what I believe and what I stand for. It's going guaranteed. It's going to ruffle some feathers. It's going to affect everyone, because now Now you've got to have extra effort and extra work to deal with me because I've decided to change. So no one likes to feel imposed upon because now I'm making you change.
No, that's so, so true. I've had a very similar experience with my ADHD, right? Because I kind of got in the habit from when I was quite young already, that when I'd get that weird look from people like, what are you saying? What are you doing? And I would get it a lot. I was one of those kids. I would kind of just shrivel up into my shell, and I would feel so ashamed and so like, oh, like the mask came off in front of everybody. I found that I would shrivel up internally and I just wouldn't deal with it. And post-diagnosis and in the course of my studies and figuring out what the hell is actually going on up here, I've come to love myself, and I've had to learn how to love myself. It's not something that comes naturally to me. I don't think, I think it should come naturally, and I think it does when you're little, but you're taught not to. And undoing that process as a grown-up can be incredibly difficult. So I now, even today, I'll find myself in situations where, because of my ADHD, I'll go, wait, hang on, I can't deal with that right now, or something. Or like, I'm like, well, I'll turn to someone, I'll say, look, I'm completely overstimulated. And I'll get one of those looks. And I no longer back down from it. I no longer shy away from it. I go, let me explain it to you so that they can understand it. And it's from a place of assertion, saying like, this is how I feel. This is who I am. I'm not going to ignore this part of me and this thing that is digging at me in order to make you comfortable. Frankly, if I'm not palatable for you, you can choke. That's not even my words. That was from episode 2. Hannah Kemp said that, and I was like, say it louder. Oh my gosh. Petra, I could literally talk with you for hours, man.
I love that you said about making other people comfortable, because that's such a conditioning, and definitely for women. I mean, studies show that it's definitely more woman-oriented, where it's making others comfortable. So I had a conversation with a friend of mine earlier where we were talking about being perfectionists and good, right, and perfect. And, we did this wrong, and how quickly we are to criticize ourselves for things we did, we didn't do, etc. And letting people down. And she was talking about something about being a people pleaser. And I said to her, is it people pleasing or is it not wanting to let people down? And she's like, oh. And she said, P, that has just changed everything for me. And then she started,
Petra, dropping bars there, hey?
Because I've always considered myself a people pleaser my whole life. But when I said that to her, and it cleared so much for her, I started thinking like, shit, that's what it was for me. It wasn't about getting the A or the A plus or achieve or driving or striving for it or being top 10 or whatever it looked like.
It was about the reaction.
It was about not letting my parents down, not letting my teachers down, not letting my, partner down, not letting my friends down. Not so much making sure you're happy, but making sure that I definitely don't disappoint you. So that's also, something to consider.
It's nuanced. No, it is. It's incredibly nuanced. I get you completely. Now, in your book, Living on Purpose, right, which I haven't gotten to read in its entirety as of yet. I've only seen snippets here and there. But I know that you discuss, and it's obviously centered around the importance of purpose. So how can individuals align their personal and professional lives with their values so that everything meets?
I love that. Look, the clearer you get around what you stand for and what you believe in, it comes down to clarity and awareness for me. So you need to be willing to discover it. You need to be willing to be brave, be courageous, change what needs to be changed, adopt what, reject or release what no longer serves. So being willing to be aware of it, and then make choices, I think is the foundation of all of that, to really, really plug into, and it's not just going to be an overnight journey or quickly mind mapping it. This is a process. For example, having written the book around purpose, and although the intention around it was about living on purpose, so living intentionally, creating our life, it was also around aligning your purpose, your values, your vision, so that you're living a fulfilled and happy life that's making an impact.
Right.
So I've kind of always had a way of speaking around purpose and values, and purpose being, like Simon Sinek's, your why, your reason for the North Star, the compass that pulls you, all of those analogies. And for me, I was so aligned with my purpose, which for me was being a voice for the voiceless. No surprise there from a young age already, whether it's humans or animals.
For sure. It was going to happen. It was in the cards. It was in the stars.
Completely. It was in the Leo starscape. And then the other one, there's a few obviously, but the two biggest ones was making sure that I'm your biggest cheerleader and that I can reflect back the magic that you are, which then aligns with the work that I do as a coach, as a speaker, that whole space. And
absolutely. It's your most powerful tool you've got at your disposal, is that connection, right?
Yeah. And that comes from so clear on who you are, what you stand for, what you believe in. You naturally start making choices that align in your life, which means the direction that your life goes, professionally, personally, in relationships, starts becoming more and more aligned. And having clarity of your purpose and vision also gives you the gift of being able to say no way easier than ever before. The whole people talking about not disappointing people. When you're clear on your purpose, like if I had a fundraising event that I was doing, or an idea that I had to raise funds or money for one of my beneficiaries, if people, would invite me out to a braai or invite me out here and there, and I had this thing to do, it was such an easy no without feeling guilty. Ask me that in my personal capacity, and I'd be like, and I'd probably end up going.
Right.
Because I was so clear on my purpose, which is to be a voice for the voiceless and be your biggest cheerleader.
Yes.
When that's on the cards, nothing is shiny enough to detract me from that. That's clarity of your purpose and your values. So just, be willing to look at it and explore and be curious and,
and be honest.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone so flawlessly explain such a subjective definition of success. Like success it's a completely subjective definition depending on like who you ask, but you've just encapsulated it perfectly for whoever this might apply to. I would love to know, because I know this is an area of expertise for you. What role do you believe vulnerability plays in leadership and personal growth?
Wow, sure. Jenna, you ask great questions.
Stop it, I like it.
Tell me more. Stop it, give me more.
Oh. I had a toddler say that to me the other day in the car, because she must have heard it from someone else, and she's recently just started talking. She was like, stop it, I like it. And I nearly died, Petra. Sorry, I'm getting distracted.
So vulnerability, it ties in with the honesty that you're talking about, that you're referring to.
Yes.
And vulnerability, so many times I remember an ex-partner of mine saw it as a weakness. But that was the whole toxic masculinity thing that he was playing in. And this isn't judgment. It's just saying that this is what was going on.
That's what he was experiencing.
Exactly. So whenever I was vulnerable, he saw that as a weakness. And he called me, you're too soft, you're too sensitive, you're too this, you're too that, the next thing.
Oh, and that sounds familiar.
We shrink, right? I made myself smaller. I made myself wrong for it. Where over the years, when I started becoming more of who I am and really started aligning more with who I am, as opposed to trying to be the good, right, and perfect and sweet and nice and, how I was raised to be and who I always believed I was, when I started unpatterning some of that, I started feeling more and more liberated, and my ability to be able to be more vulnerable became my gift, or became a not just a gift, but a capacity, a potency, which we all have. So I share really vulnerable in my talks and in my coaching sessions. I get really, really vulnerable. And I know that a lot of other professionals don't. They
Yes.
separate the perfectionism and the vulnerability.
Mm.
For me, if you can see the human side in me, that even if I'm leading in a certain space, that I'm not leading from up here looking down because I've got all my shit together. No,
Yeah.
it's Jenna.
Who
You
the
and me are saying,
hell has their shit who has their ducks in a row? If you've got your ducks in a row, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know the formula.
Shame, those ducks have been drugged or something. So there's no way that they'd be able to think straightforward. But that's the thing, right? Is you and I are the same. There's no one greater, no one lesser than. The difference is maybe, yes, in this area of expertise is where I'm leading within this area of expertise, whether it's the job title or the role or whatever that is.
Yes.
But I'm still able to connect with you as another human being, vulnerably, so that you and I connect, because that's where the magic happens, is when you and I can start co-creating our lives, we can start co-creating our businesses, we can start co-creating projects and initiatives together, versus there being a situation I'm the boss, I'm telling you what to do.
It makes a massive difference.
Huge, massive.
Wow.
And it's so much fun creating with people and being vulnerable and saying, look, these are look, let me just bring in as well, is that there are times and spaces where you might not feel safe to be vulnerable. So that's the whole psychological safety.
But you create psychological safety through this exact kind of connection. There's a lot of power in recognizing that as human beings, we're an incredibly social species. And that means no matter how introverted you are, connection is still the most powerful way to get through to someone. And you also made me think when you were saying about, the power of saying no, of being able to just, okay, no, it's enough now, is I see someone like you, and I think I identify so much because I took responsibility for other people, not necessarily for their actions, but for their happiness, for their comfort, and it was incredibly toxic to me for a very, very long time. And it landed me at the worst rock bottom I've ever seen in my short time on this earth. And I think having that distinction of being able to say, like, we're a social species and we can connect in this equal dynamic, but simultaneously I know that I can't pour from an empty cup.
And we know that phrase so well. I know that phrase so well. Jenna, I burnt out. I had a breakdown. My immune system was shot because I was doing exactly that. I knew this. I was coaching people not to do that, but because I'd misaligned as my purpose was about just giving to others. That was the difference, versus gifting to myself the same kind of passion that I gave to everyone else. So I was pouring from, there was nothing in the kitchen. There was like not a drop of water in the kitchen in the household, the proverbial household that was my body.
Petra.
There's nothing. No, but it was that point where, and that's when I started questioning again. I've had so many moments of reevaluating my purpose and my values and my vision, so many moments. Because for me, I don't always listen, because I go, and then the universe, God, my body shouts me the finger and like, okay, now you're going to sit and lie down.
I'm exactly the same though, because I still struggle with burnout, because I'm still working a full-time job as a dance teacher, and then I'm working at as my hostessing job in the evenings. I'm finishing off my degree. I'm trying to get my business going. I'm editing podcasts for hours on end. But honestly, I think what's been the most frustrating for me is that a lot of the work that I have found gives me a lot of purpose, and it makes me excited, and it puts me in tune with my creativity, which I feel defines me as a person. And it's the very things that are not making me money right now. And I know that. and it's, you know what, we go through these ebbs and flows as well. But I think what I would love to hear from you is from the monetization point of view. How can someone use this as like a formula almost, if you want to think about it that way, to create that effective dynamic where things are flowing, things are working, and you've got a return on investment as well?
Oh man, they just keep
it's the $1 million question, right?
Let me know when you figure it out, okay?
I love that, Petra.
Let me know. Send it my way.
Oh, I love that.
My points of views, my perspectives around that is, and also it's so multidimensional, right? So we've got to take it
Huge.
in. Yeah, I'm going to use a tiny little viewpoint or kind of just pull out
Context, yeah.
Exactly. So man, this is like a 3 hour conversation.
Oh, we can stick around, don't worry.
3, 4, 5, and 7. I mean, yeah, in that order. So for me, it's about being true to you, 100% yes. Also realizing that to live and operate in this world, in this life, in this reality, we require funds to be able to do it. So do what I love, get paid as well. So obviously the perfect intersection of, the ikigai, where
Right.
everything just merges in a beautiful relationship.
Who's the ikigai? I'm just joking. I know what ikigai is. I just went, okay, go for it. I'll stop. It was an intrusive thought. I had to let it out.
The word bomb. Perfect. So I think it's a fine balance, a constant balance, a constant shift of seeing what's working now, what isn't working now. Sometimes it's a weekly thing. So I ask myself a lot of questions. So, okay, P, what is it that I can be and do today that is going to generate more business, that is going to create money, that is going to contribute to my life and living, that is going to contribute to my charities? So sometimes I've got to get clear on what do I need to be and do today. If I'm working on certain projects, I kind of just go with those until that project's done. And I'm like, okay, come up for air. What is it that I need to be and do today? And then noticing when things aren't, because I can also, Jenna, I'm the same as you. I've never done just one thing. I mean, my charities thing, 365, coincidentally, but I was judged so much by lecturers, by teachers saying, you're one of those master of none. And I took it on as such a judgment, like I was never going to be successful because I was never going to be an expert. So that was,
and you doubted your own capability as a result.
Completely. Well, I'm a manic manifestor, a manic creator. Yes. I can create all day long, which is the same reason that when I was at college, I studied fashion design and we had a project and let's say they'd give us the week. By day 2, I was done because I would get so into it and I'd work right through the night and I'd create. By day 3, I'd now looking at this and now I was bored of what I'd created. I was like, oh my God, this is so old. It's so boring. Only because I'd been looking at it since Monday. So by Wednesday, I was so bored. So I'd start the creation process again by Wednesday evening. By Friday, I had a whole new project to hand in. Then I would just hand them both in. The amount of times that my lecturers would sit me down like, Petra, why? Choose one. You need to give us one. I was like, no. Like, why did you do 2? I'm like, oh, because I did this when I was bored and I don't like it. And they're like, but this is amazing. Like they're both, that was my capacity to create. So I get what you're saying in terms of creation. So I can also burn myself out because I'm doing a lot of stuff. So I've got to be very vigilant.
And manage your energy, your spoons. There's an analogy that people wake up with a certain number of spoons every morning. I can't remember who came up with it, but when I find it, I'll post it in the description. And then some people wake up with like 3 spoons and some people wake up with 10. And, for some people, sitting in the traffic takes no spoons. And for some people, it takes 5. So context,
I love that. It's managing your energy. And with energy, for me, what it's translated in is staying connected with my body. That's what's really helped me the most is I've, in the last 2 years, with everything that's been going on, I've been given the opportunity to, for the first time ever in my whole life, start having a relationship with my body. So I refer to my body in third person. And when we start feeling anxious or overwhelmed, I check in with my body straight away. I'm like, okay, body, what we need? What's going on with us? Do we need to breathe? Kind of what you're saying with when people, you've got to ask them to, give you space or you're too overstimulated. So I've just got a different conversation with my body. I'm like, okay, what do we want right now? What do we need right now? Okay, right now we actually need to put our feet on the grass. We need sunshine. We need to just go and be and disconnect from everything. Or then my body just wants to run and she wants to dance and she wants to move. And 2.5 hours later, she's still dancing and moving, which means then I'll just work until later in the evening. So at least I have that freedom to do that. But I think, Jenna, it's when we're juggling so many things, I think one of the biggest tools for me, which is why I've been able to release the epilepsy as well and manage my mental, emotional well-being most of the time. Things happen, but it's regulating it as it's coming up, right?
For sure,
is
for sure.
Having that connection of like, oh, okay, there's stuff going on. What's going on now? What's going on? Versus just going, which is what I used to do.
And having that sensitivity, it's almost like a spiritual awareness that your body is a separate entity to yourself.
No, I wake up. So I'm an access bars facilitator, and in the classes that I teach, so we can put a link, it's a beautiful somatic movement or modality to help you regulate your nervous system, how to get out of trauma, whether it's emotional, physical, spiritual, psychological, doesn't matter, but just really ultimately to help our bodies regulate and declutter that very, very, very busy minds that we have. So almost hit the reset button. And through that is where I've started connecting with my body more. And now I've lost my train of thought with all of that said. Funny that we're talking about this now. And I've just proved it.
No, there was actually something that came up for me though. Maybe when it comes back to you, go and I'll stop.
Cool.
So there was something that came to my mind. After my last suicide attempt of, swallowing 2 bottles of Panados, I was not very worried about my fertility. I was really worried about whether I would be infertile, and it's something I've never really, discussed out in public before. But when I went to the doctor to go and get it checked out, and I was sitting in the car with my mom, we were talking about it, and like she came with me for the appointment. I didn't want to go by myself. And she said to me, you need to talk to your female parts. You need to talk to all of those, like that whole little network, and tell it that everything's going to be okay. And I kind of sat back like this, and I was like, obviously your first thought is, that's crazy talk. But I sat there and I thought, why does this feel so intrinsically comforting to me then? Why does it feel comforting to me, like I'm reconnecting with an old friend by just speaking to my body as a separate entity to me, if you will?
I connect with my body every morning. I say good morning to her. I thank her for being here. I thank her for waking up with me, because if she hadn't woken up with me, then I wouldn't be here. I would just be like a floating, discombobulated being.
Petra, tell us a little bit about your personal journey to this point of mindfulness in your own life and career.
But that's the thing. I think one of the biggest for me with balancing and preventing burnout and stress release and stress relief is all around regulating your body and staying connected with who you are. So being authentic, being vulnerable. But for me, it's definitely been having the relationship with my body, which I've never had before. So I've got more freedom with her now. So now when I, emotionally eat, I'm very aware of it. I'm like, okay, a lot's been going on this week. I'm about to buy chips for dinner and ice cream and Coke.
Let's just pig out, man. I have those days too.
I used to make myself so wrong for that. I used to feel so horrible and guilty, where now it's a conscious choice. It's like, this is what we do now, and this is what we're choosing, and that's fine. So very big difference there. But I think if everyone can start connecting with their bodies, honoring their bodies, some bodies are the vessel. Whatever your religious beliefs, there's a being, there's a soul, there's a spirit, whatever that thing is. Inside us, an infinite, whatever it is. And we live in such a limited reality just defined by our bodies. Whereas if we can expand beyond that and be grateful for our bodies and bring our bodies along in this creation of life, there's so much more ease and freedom versus just dragging and forcing our bodies along and punishing them and making them do things and making them wake up early and making them exercise.
And there's so much power in that awareness, right? And there's when I say power in that awareness, particularly for neurodivergents who are trying to hopefully this is what I advise neurodivergents to do, to mold your environment to suit you rather than molding yourself to suit your environment. But that awareness, spatially and dare I say spiritually even, is so vital to that kind of that working out. I don't know how to phrase it. English is failing me today.
No, Jenna, but you know what? Your body is what you have with you all the time. So as much as you can't control your environment always, because sometimes you'll be out in the world and you can't control around you, you've always got your body to help regulate you. Yes. So that's what I'd really encourage is the more we start connecting with our bodies and understanding what regulates our bodies for us, because it can all be individual. For me, when I go and do big talks and, there's a few hundred or 1,000 people in front of me and there's chaos and there's the news and they're inviting me and there's the sound checks and there's the music and all of that's going on, it can be a lot. For me, I literally sternum. I'll put my fingers here where my sternum is. Within 2 seconds, everything's just relaxed. But that's my thing. Other people kind of tap or do whatever. My thing is literally my finger goes there. No one even knows. No one's even noticed. I'm just talking to someone and I'm doing that. And it's told my brain, my body's connected with my brain, and they're in communication now outside of my logical mind.
Yes.
And they're calming.
Wow. It's also like I've heard of concepts of bilateral stimulation being quite an effective grounding tool. And I've caught myself doing it like without realizing it, where I like to tap my collarbones like this, but but not just tapping them, like I go hard, like I can feel the reverberation through my ribs, but it's weirdly grounding for me in that moment. It brings me back to it and it forces my thought process to move somewhere, Well,
when concentrating on what's going on in your body, like if I ask you to focus on your breath right now, focus on your breathing, the air coming in through your nose, and then feel what it feels like going out your nose, and then breathe in again and concentrate on the coolness or the warmness of it coming into your nose, and then focus on the breath going out. Is it warm? Has it changed? When you're focusing on your breath, when you're focusing in your body on that sensation, your mind stopped. And that's what's calming. So it's finding ways to navigate everything that's going around us.
It's like a record that keeps skipping and you just got to
Exactly that.
This is the visualization I got. It was like a
I adore your brain. I love it so much.
Oh my God. Petra, I love that I can have these conversations with someone.
And it came from all this chaos when my life imploded and everything fell apart. And when I finally started coming up for air,
the best things you do, funnily enough.
Right? The biggest gift. It's been the biggest gift. It doesn't always feel like it. Of course we get it. But the biggest gift has been that I get to recreate my life now. And that's
sometimes being phenomenal doesn't always feel phenomenal. That's all I'm going to say.
So for me, it was really looking at, because I had to relook everything in my life, because so many things that I thought were real and true, the forever picture and the true love and the get married, it's always and forever, all of that stuff. All of a sudden shattered.
And your sense of control, right?
Completely. So I started looking at those values, like, okay, well, what do I believe? Actually, do I still believe this? Do I not believe this? So I started questioning a lot on what I'd thought was true and real and now had been shattered. So that gave me the opportunity to ask myself the questions and like, okay, what is going on here? Do we still believe this? Don't we? Speaking again in third person. And I started having conversations with other women that were going through the same thing. And because I was putting so much work into healing, because I decided, and maybe this is part of that overachiever A-type personality, was like, I will be healed within 6 months.
I will heal myself. I don't need you. I will heal Myself.
I did courses. I jumped right into therapy and counseling and courses, the whole shebang. And 6 months was great. I was feeling amazing. And then something else happened and it just knocked me off my feet. Felt like worse than the first time.
And you have to kind of figure out how to go with the flow in that sense. And instead of sticking to a structure that you try and create for your own life, because things never work out the way we plan them to.
No, you can have an idea, like a loose framework of where you want to go, but it's when you attach to the outcome that's where the frustration comes in. So I was having a lot of conversations with women that were saying to me, divorce apparently statistically, especially when you're the one that's left or betrayed, can take 5 years to heal. And I was like, no, I'm not signing up for 5 years.
No, blow this popsicle stand.
So I started actively even more wanting to create or recreate my life, because now it was recreating everything, what felt like everything. Because I did believe in happily ever after and, my soulmate and my person and always and forever and all of that stuff. So now that didn't exist, I was questioning everything. So the conversations I was having with women were, they felt stuck in different areas in their lives, whether it was relationships or business or their bodies, or they didn't know what they loved to do anymore. They didn't have passions. They didn't have a purpose. And I started having these conversations, or they started approaching me to have these conversations. I thought, hold on, there's so many people here that are in that space where they're feeling frustrated, like they don't have choice, where what if I offer them a platform to say, you've got choice, and we get to recreate our lives, body, mind, being, and our businesses. What if we get to recreate our lives as opposed to, I don't have options. I'm frustrated here. I'm upset. I don't have enough. This isn't working out.
And it's not too late. We always look at it and we go, oh, but it's too late for that. Oh, well, it's too late for me to start my own business. It would have been optimal for me to do it before, I started working full time, and then, but now I've kind of passed that. And oh, well, it's too late for me to travel because I've already signed a lease. And it's not too late. It's not.
You can change your mind. You can change your mind. You can cancel the lease, even if it means that there's consequences that you need to pay out or whatever. That's still a choice.
Yes, so it's an option. Throw caution to the wind, coming from a very impulsive ADHDer.
But that's the beauty, is that when you are open to recreating your life, you're coming at it from a place of possibilities and choice.
There's an element of this healing process, I think, that I really connect with in what you're saying. Being that I found, like, I went through X, Y, and Z and whatever, and I've been raised by in a family where people are very brand conscious, very aware of what we put out there, and I think because of that, it would have been very easy to fall into narcissistic personality patterns. And there are times I've had to check myself. I've had to be like, come on, let's think this through. And I have that internal dialogue with myself all the time. I wrote an essay in high school where I titled that it was the I and the me, and they're having a conversation, and it's always the way I've thought about it since. But what I found incredibly difficult in those times was I thought, okay, I need to toughen up. I got to toughen up. I got to deal with this. I've got to, and actually it doesn't take strength to harden yourself. It doesn't take courage. It doesn't take much at all. It takes fear, Yeah, exactly. What takes courage, what takes strength, what's kind of difficult to do is to maintain your softness regardless.
Gemma. Yes. So beautifully tied up.
I can drop thighs too, Petra.
I know you can. Loads of them.
Oh my God. I've loved this conversation, and I would so love to have you back on for another episode next season, because we can talk forever, you and I. Where can people reach out to you, and can people, your socials, your Instagram, LinkedIn? We'll put all those links below, but where else can they find out more about you?
Fab. Well, it's my name and surname across all social media platforms, so not complicated. Petra Laranjo on everything. And there's the link also to my 31-day mental health hack, or hack series rather, on YouTube. So every day there's a quick little hack. And yes, it can be a plaster sometimes. It's not necessarily getting to the core of the issue, because that would require one-on-one sessions. But if it's something that's quick to implement today that is going to help you lift your energy, your vibration a little bit, your mood a little bit, so that you can make different choices that are going to support you and nurture you, then that's what I hope with the 31-day mental health hack series as well. So please check that out on YouTube as well.
Oh, amazing. Petra, thank you for your vulnerability, for your wisdom, for your softness, for your insights, and thank you for feeding the strength, I think, that we all kind of need to draw on from time to time. You're truly a visionary to be. So I so appreciate what you do. And please, everybody else, check out Petra's stuff. And for the rest of you, I will catch you next week for another episode.
Thank you so much. I adore you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.